What are we talking about with receiving and responding?
Yes. Again, I think I'd kind of like to start with the opposite of that, because what I really found, I can certainly relate to this, and in so many women in our community and who we've worked with, they have this system in place, an unconscious system, that they don't deserve love and they can't get a great man and kind of keep him forever unless they're constantly giving to him. I think so many of us have been kind of brought up placing our value and on our worth on what we can do and accomplish and give to others. So the idea of a guy showing up and just loving us because of who we are, not because of something we're doing or giving to him constantly, is kind of a foreign concept to so many of us women. I totally get that. So basically, a masculine energy man has this huge desire deep down to be with a woman who's able to receive what he has to give. So something I always say is, inspiring a man's love and devotion as a woman doesn't really involve much effort at all. Effort in the traditional sense of like doing a lot of things and giving so much of yourself. It's really about being who you are. That's what makes a man see you, know he's interested, and eventually fall in love. It's who you are, not what you do. So just being able to lean back and receive from a man can be difficult at first, but it's really, really important. And then the next step after that is responding. So giving back to a man from that place is fantastic. You just don't want to be constantly giving and giving and giving, coming from a place of lack or anxiety or insecurity, and then subtly hoping you're going to get something back from a man in return, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. And it's one of those things where it kind of blinds women, right? And it happens all the time. I talk to so many women where it's like they're completely blinded because they think things are going great. Right. Because they're like given to a guy, they become like his social planner, and they're like, okay, like we're going to go here and then we're going to go there and we're going to do these things and show up here on Friday. Right. And so the guy's like, well, okay, I'll just go along with it. Right. Because he's like, she's doing all the work. I don't care. Right. And so he like shows up and he does all the things and he lets you come over with, like food and alcohol and, presents and all the things that you show up and do for a man. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself like, oh, this is great. He loves this. I'm giving him all these things. He must appreciate it so much. And then, they're like 6 months down the road, a year down the road, they're like, he still isn't calling me his girlfriend. He still isn't talking about, us being a couple together. He still hasn't introduced me to his family. Like, what's going on here? And what they blinded themselves to is the fact that you can tell a man's interest in you based on how he's acting. Yeah. Right. And if you're doing everything for him, then you're not getting to witness his actions. And he's, you would have known months ago, at the beginning, in fact, that he wasn't really even that interested in you from a relationship perspective if you weren't doing everything for him. And so since you've been doing everything for him, you're blinded, completely blinded to the fact that you never built that emotional connection. He's just letting you do all this stuff and you're starting to feel taken for granted because he doesn't actually care that much. I mean, it's great. And I mean, who doesn't want somebody to show up and give them things, right? And do everything for them. You know what I mean? Like, who doesn't want that? But that doesn't create the type of relationship that you want to have. That doesn't create a masculine feminine dynamic in the relationship where he's stepping up, he's pushing things forward, he's moving things forward, he wants something more with you, he's invested in you. So the thing where I talk about the sunken cost theory, where he feels like he doesn't want to let you go anymore because he's invested so much. None of that stuff happens if you're the one that's doing everything.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm like dying to jump in. I love everything you said there. Yeah, because here's the thing. Men are just, they're happy to take what you have to give. They'll take everything you got, but that's not what fosters this deep connection and makes him feel like he just can't live without you. Something I always say, I know this is kind of a big statement or a strong statement, but masculine energy men cannot fall in love when we're giving to them constantly. See how forward leaning that is, masculine energy, right? Filling that space. they fall in love when they're giving to us. Something you always say, Matt, that's amazing is it's the amount of effort a man puts into the relationship that determines his desire to commit, right? Not the amount that a woman puts in. So just like you said, if a woman's giving and giving and doing, and a lot of this is unconscious, like I said, we have these unconscious patterns running that tell us that we don't deserve love or a great man unless we're giving to him. So just becoming aware of that and leaning back. And I mean, men are thrilled when they find a woman who's able to just let him feel like a man in the relationship, I think.
No, I mean, you're totally right. A guy feels like he wants to give to you, like men want to do that. He wants to feel like a man. He wants to stand up, step up and do all those things for the woman that he sees as a potential woman that he wants to have in his life. They did a study a while back where they asked men about, like what do you want in a relationship, right? And they found that the overwhelming majority of men, I think it was like 87% of men, want a relationship that's serious, that leads towards a committed relationship, potentially marriage with children and all that kind of stuff. But they want it with the right woman, right? And if he doesn't feel like you're the right woman and, all these things, he's not going to do those things for you, right? And that's really a very, very important factor that a lot of women miss out on is they're like, okay, well, I want to like manipulate some dude, any dude, you know what I mean? Like there's this celebrity and I want to get him, right? How do I get that guy and make him do all these things that I want him to do? And it's like, well, he has to look at you and see you as the right kind of woman. And there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of inspire him to feel that way and think of you in that way. But ultimately it comes down to him, right? And he's going to, you both have to choose each other, right? It's never a one-sided thing. It's never a, I want this, and so I'm going to force this other person into everything that I want. It's never that way, ever. And so you have to remember that it's a two-way street, and that, men do want to do all these things. They want to move forward. They want to step up. They want to act like the man. They want to be the provider. They want to be a masculine force in your life, but they also want to do it, one, for the right woman. And he has to feel like you're the right woman. And if he doesn't, he's not going to do that. And two, he wants to feel appreciated for it. Right. And there's this thing where I talk to women a lot where they're like, they'll do this thing where they like jump to different sides, right? So they're like giving to a guy, right? And then all of a sudden they jump to this other side and they start doing nothing at all, right? And they hear the leaning back advice and they're like, okay, I'm doing nothing, like, and they're like, these guys, I never get second dates anymore. Like, what's going on here? And it's always this thing where they're like, there's a middle ground, right? And you need to still like connect with them. You need to still show interest. You need to still appreciate him for these things, and not get a attitude of entitlement where you think you expect it from him and it's his job. And so he better be doing it. And if he's not doing it, then there's, that kind of thing. You don't want to do that either. And so, I don't know. Am I running off on a tangent here?
No, I was just actually going to say it's a little bit in line with what I was thinking. Is something I wanted to mention is anger and resentment build as a woman in direct proportion to the amount of energy and effort you're putting out, as even mental effort and emotional effort by constantly thinking about a man and strategizing when he's not putting that same amount of effort in. So if you're doing all this stuff to try to make him step up or make him see you as this great partner, try to get him to fall in love with you, you're going to feel angry and resentful when he doesn't do what you hoped he would. And a lot of this is unconscious, like the last one. So just whenever you're starting to feel that way, anxious, angry, resentful, irritated, annoyed with your man, you can always ask, where am I putting in too much effort? Where can I reel that back in? Where am I doing things in the hopes of trying to get something back from him? And again, it comes from a good place. A lot of times it's not like you're purposely trying to manipulate or control the situation, but it's a lot of it's unconscious. It's just important to become aware of some of these things. Just kind of pull back on some of that a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And I just wanted to throw another thing in there as well. And it's the whole thing about investment. And, I
Yeah.
talk about investment here and there and a lot as much as I can, because it's a very, very important topic, because it's the same, right? Like we talk about how a guy needs to feel invested in you. Well, one, it's not a bad thing necessarily if you're investing in him. And, you, like what Helena was talking about, where you respond, right? It's not like you can't ever give to a guy, right?
Right, exactly.
Helena just said, I'm like trying to make sure my hand's going in the right direction. Helena just said that, you respond and then you give based on that response, right?
Yeah.
A guy, like if a guy's moving towards you, if he's chasing you, if he's pursuing you, it's no problem if you're giving to him.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
It's like he's moving towards you. The problem is when you're the one investing and he's not. Right? He's doing nothing and you're doing everything, and you don't even know where he's at because you're so moving forward towards him. And what happens is the exact opposite of what we're talking about happening, right? Which is all of a sudden you become super invested. You start getting hit with those psychological triggers that we talk about having these guys get hit with, right? The sunken cost theory and all of those kinds of things, the emotional investment and whatnot. And then next thing you know, you are feeling like you can't let him go, right? And he doesn't care at all because he has no investment. And so he's like, whatever, I don't care, and you're like, I have to make this work. I've put so much energy and effort into this, right? And it's just, you don't want to be there. You don't want to be there.
Yeah. I love what you said. I mean, really, if you know a guy's crazy about you, if his energy is coming towards you and he's, if he's very open about where you stand with him, you can do anything. You can do whatever you want. You can call him up, invite him over, cook him dinner. But most women are not at that place, and they want to do those things because they're coming from a place of lack or anxiety or insecurity, and they're subtly sometimes doing that to try to like lock a guy down. It's just totally the wrong way to go.
And it only gets worse. It only gets worse doing that. Absolutely.